Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Story Timeline. Today, I want to tell you about a boy who had nothing, no money, no home, sometimes no food at all. He slept on cold streets, he wore torn clothes. Other children laughed at him. But this same boy grew up to become one of the most famous, most loved people in the entire world. His name was Charlie Chaplin. How does a boy with nothing become a legend that the whole world remembers, even 100 years later? Stay with me because this story will surprise you. And if you enjoy true stories like this, make sure you subscribe to Story Timeline, because we bring you a new incredible story every single week. It was a cold evening in London in the year 1895. A small boy sat alone on a street corner. He was only 6 years old. His name was Charlie Chaplin. He was hungry, he was cold, his clothes were old and dirty. People walked past him, nobody looked at him, nobody stopped, nobody helped. This was Charlie's life from the very beginning. His father had left the family when Charlie was still a baby. His mother, Hannah, tried her best to take care of Charlie and his older brother, Sidney. She was a singer, she performed in small theaters around London, but the money was never enough. Then, something terrible happened. Hannah's voice began to fail. Without her voice, she could not sing. Without singing, there was no income at all. The family fell into deep poverty. They moved from house to house. Sometimes they had no house at all. They slept wherever they could find shelter. Charlie was always hungry. He wore the same clothes every single day, and the other children mocked him for it. He felt ashamed, he felt invisible, he felt completely alone. When Charlie was 7 years old, everything got worse. His mother's mind began to break under the pressure of poverty and grief. She could no longer think clearly. The authorities took her away to a hospital for the mentally ill. Charlie and Sidney had no parents left to care for them. They were sent to a workhouse, a grim institution built for London's poorest, forgotten children. Life inside was brutal. The children worked from morning until night. They scrubbed floors. They washed endless piles of clothing. The food was barely enough to survive on. The rooms were freezing. The beds were hard as stone. Charlie hated every single day of it, but in the middle of this darkness, something unexpected began to grow inside him. Charlie discovered he had a gift. He could make people laugh. When the other boys around him were sad and hopeless, Charlie would pull funny faces. He would walk in ridiculous, exaggerated ways. He told jokes nobody had heard before, and slowly, the boys around him began to smile, then laugh. For just a moment, they forgot their hunger. They forgot their pain, and Charlie felt something he had never felt before. He felt important. He felt seen. He felt, for the first time in his short life, truly alive. Years passed. It was a sunny morning in London, 1903. Charlie was now 14 years old, and he walked nervously into a small theater that was auditioning young performers. His hands were shaking, but he desperately wanted and needed this opportunity. The theater manager looked him over. "Can you act?" he asked. "Can you make people laugh?" Charlie didn't answer with words. Instead, he moved. He walked like a tired old man. Then he stumbled like a drunk. Then he pretended to trip and fall in the most comical way imaginable. The manager burst out laughing. "You're good, boy," he said. "You can start tomorrow." That single audition became Charlie's first real step into the world of performance. He joined a traveling comedy troupe, moving from town to town, learning everything about the craft of making people laugh without needing a single word. He learned that sometimes the body speaks louder than the mouth ever could. Audiences adored him. He was small and thin, but on stage, he became something powerful, fast, smooth, hypnotic to watch. Nobody had ever seen a performer quite like him. Life was still hard, the pay was small, the travel was exhausting, but Charlie never complained. He knew, deep down, that this was his only way out of poverty. Then, in 1910, everything changed. It was a gray, misty morning in September when Charlie stood on the deck of a large ship leaving England for good. He stared out at the endless ocean, feeling terrified and thrilled all at once. An American theater company had invited him to perform across the United States. America, they said, was the land where anyone could reinvent themselves. Charlie didn't know what waited for him, but he knew he had to find out. When he arrived in New York, everything felt overwhelming. The buildings were taller, the streets wider, the pace of life faster than anything he'd known. For a moment, Charlie felt like that small, invisible boy on the streets of London all over again, but he refused to give up. He performed across the country: New York, Chicago, San Francisco, and American audiences fell completely in love with him. In 1913, a film producer watched Charlie perform live on stage. He saw something in Charlie that nobody else had fully captured on camera before. After the show, he approached Charlie with an offer that seemed almost unbelievable, $150 a week to appear in motion pictures. Charlie had never even stood in front of a film camera in his life. He knew nothing about the process. Would he even be good at it? He thought about it for exactly 1 minute. Then he said yes. His first attempts at film acting were rough. Theater performance and film performance, he quickly learned, were completely different arts. On stage, you move big so the back row can see you. On camera, every small movement is magnified. He had to relearn everything from scratch. One day, a director told Charlie he had 30 minutes to find a costume for a comedic scene. Charlie rushed to the wardrobe room and grabbed whatever he could find: a jacket that was far too small, trousers that were far too big, oversized shoes, a tiny hat, a simple cane, and a small mustache. He looked in the mirror, and staring back at him was someone entirely new, a character who was poor but proud, small but brave, sad but endlessly funny. A character with, above all, a good heart. The moment he stepped onto the film set wearing this costume, everyone stopped and stared. Then they began to laugh. This character, later known simply as the Tramp, would go on to become one of the most recognized figures in the entire history of entertainment. In every film, the Tramp had nothing, no money, no home, yet he always tried to do what was right. He helped strangers. He fell in love. He stood up to bullies far bigger than himself. Audiences everywhere saw themselves reflected in him. Everyone, in every country, understood what it felt like to struggle. But the Tramp never gave up, and that simple, stubborn hope gave millions of people around the world a reason to believe in their own struggles too. Just 2 years later, in 1915, Charlie received a letter offering him $1,250 a week, an almost impossible amount of money for a boy who had once slept on London's freezing streets. He kept rising. He began directing his own films, controlling every detail: the story, the actors, the camera work. He was no longer just a performer. He had become a true artist. In 1921, he released a film about the Tramp caring for an abandoned child. It made audiences laugh and cry within the same scene, something almost nobody had achieved on film before. It was a massive success, and Charlie was no longer simply famous. He was becoming a legend. In 1919, Charlie joined 3 other major stars to create their own independent film studio, giving them full creative freedom for the first time. This freedom allowed him to make his greatest works, made at a time when much of the industry had already moved on to newer technology, yet his choices proved timeless. But as Charlie's fame grew, so did controversy. His outspoken political views eventually led to conflict with the American government. In 1952, while traveling abroad, his re-entry visa was revoked. Hurt and angered, Charlie chose not to return. He settled in Switzerland with his family for the next 2 decades. Then, in April 1972, something remarkable happened. Charlie returned to America, now 83 years old, to receive a Lifetime Achievement Award. When he walked onto the stage, the entire room stood and applauded for several minutes. Some people wept. Charlie simply said, "Thank you. Thank you so much." On Christmas Day, 1977, Charlie Chaplin passed away peacefully in Switzerland, surrounded by his family, at the age of 88. Charlie Chaplin left the world proof of something powerful: that a boy who once had absolutely nothing could rise to touch the hearts of millions across every country, every language, every generation. His story teaches us something we all need to remember. Life can be unbearably hard. You can start with nothing at all, but if you keep moving forward just like the Tramp always did, you can create something that outlives you. Thank you so much for watching this story until the very end. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to Story Timeline for more incredible true stories every week. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today, and which historical story should I tell next? See you in the next story, my friends.